Right. Hello, welcome everybody. Thank you for tuning in live to today's session. This is the fourth panel in our Online Alumni Webinar Series that we're doing this week. Today we'll be looking at the Masters in International Migration and Public Policy, and we have a fantastic panel ahead of us. So I'm Delphine, Communication and Marketing Manager at the European Institute, and I'm joined by Dr. Eiko Thielman, who's Associate Professor in Political Science and Public Policy here at the European Institute, and Program Director with Dr. Pat McGovern on this program. And then we have three fantastic recent alumni who are also here in the room with us. Jonathan Purcell, who graduated in 2022 and is now the head of Public Affairs and Communications at the International Center of Justice for Palestinians here in London. We have Marion, who graduated in 2024, who is a program management assistant at the International Growth Center, which is tied to LSE. She's also based here in London. And last but not least, we have Lauren, also from 2024, who's a cultural affairs assistant at the Embassy of Ireland, also in London. So today is all London-based, but still a global panel from different nationalities. So yeah, we'll be getting started very soon. Before we get started, I just want to explain a little bit the format of today's session. So we'll be starting with a 10-minute brief presentation by Eiko, who will be giving an overview of the program and what you can expect from taking this master's and studying at the European Institute. And then we'll shift over to our panel to hear from our alumni, because that's really the goal today, is to hear from everyone's experiences, what they've gone on to do. But this is not an information session per se, so if you'd like to hear more about what we have on offer here at the European Institute in terms of things like career development and academic support, and also accessing funding and all that kind of stuff, we have a session recorded from November that you can access on our website. So I'd highly encourage you to go watch that for a more in-depth overview as well. And I'll say more at the end about other sessions and resources you can access. So without further ado, I'll pass it on to Eiko. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. And thanks for the introduction, Delphine. My name is Eiko Thielemann, and as Delphine mentioned, I'm one of the two current program directors of the MSc International Migration and Public Policy. I was also one of the co-founders of the program about 14 years ago. So we are now in the 14th iteration of the program this year. We have about 50 students each academic year, and representing around about 20 different nationalities usually. The teaching staff on the program are also very international in their background. Obviously, my personal background is I'm German originally, but I studied in the US and in Germany and the UK. Have a background in economics, political science, and international relations. One of the things that I wanted to just briefly touch on to give you maybe a slightly better feel for what the program is about is its multidisciplinary nature. Of course, migration in essence is a multidisciplinary focus of study for sure. And one of the reasons why LSE decided to host the MSc in International Migration and Public Policy in the European Institute is because the European Institute is one of the few multidisciplinary departments at LSE. One of the things that LSE prides itself, and I guess we pride ourselves in the European Institute as well, is that academics and teachers involved in the various MSc programs are very much engaged in their own research and in what we call research-led teaching. So we are very much all engaged in contemporary public policy debates. We're trying to do policy relevant research, and we're trying to bring the insights of our research into the classroom. So, for example, I've been heavily involved, having worked in the EU in the past, before I came to LSE. I've been involved in working with EU institutions, with the European Commission, with the European Parliament on the reform of the common European asylum and migration system. But there are lots of other colleagues around the school and involved in the program. For example, Chaloka Bayani is the special representative for internally displaced persons in the law department, teaching 2 courses on the IMPP program. But there are others like Alan Manning, the former director of the Migration Advisory Committee of the UK government, and many others. So in some ways, our niche and our special, I guess, focus as a program in international migration, and there are obviously several, is that we are probably more public policy focused than many others. There are a number of programs around whose origin is perhaps more in anthropology or development studies or geography and so on. But we are really trying to make the most of, I guess, LSE's resources around public policy, and also, I guess, use our special location here in London, in the center of UK and international policy making, and to bring that to the program as well. So let me tell you maybe a few words about the program itself. You will have had a chance probably to look at some of the information on our website and so on. But maybe let me give you a bit of a flavor for what to expect in terms of the contents of the program. As you can see on the slide, there are 3 kind of parts to the program in particular. We're building initially on a certain set of foundational courses. So there are 3 migration-related core courses that we offer. Students can take all 3 or just 2. 2 are in the area of immigration policy. One more from above, more from the policy-making perspective. The other one more from below, taking the perspective of migrant themselves and looking at the experience of migrants as they, I guess, experience also the impact of policies on their lived experience. We then have a third core course on migrant integration. So looking at the experience of migrants once they try to integrate into host societies, and looking at policy debates around that. So those are the 3 kind of foundations. And then in addition to that, we have a range of courses, both within the European Institute, but also across other departments around LSE, that offer a number of kind of specialist migration options that, for example, focus on different categories of migration, right? So courses focused on economic migration, on family migration, on forced migration. But there are also courses, for example, that focus on particular governance arrangements or governance venues. So, for example, I teach a course on the role of the EU in regional migration governance. Developments around the common European asylum and migration policy as it has developed over the last 25, 30 years. But there are also lots of specialist courses that focus on just particular issues, whether that's migration and race, migration and colonialism, maybe gender issues as they relate to migration, human trafficking, and and a whole range of other issues that you will be able to choose as your specializations in terms of your optional courses. And then in the third part, you have a chance as part of the program to develop your own research project under the guidance of one or more of the academics that are specialists in related or in that area. Um, and um, and that's really an opportunity, right, to delve a little bit deeper into a particular area of your interest. And we've had fantastic results over the years in terms of dissertation that have been written, many of which have been published either in journals or in working papers or as blog contributions and so on. Maybe just a final word on kind of accompanying courses that are on offer that are focused on professional skills development in the European Institute. You may see that here at the bottom of the slide, engaging with Europe professional skills workshop. Here we bring in a number of experts from outside LSE and sometimes also internal speakers to talk about issues such as speech writing as a skill that might be useful to a lot of our students. Issues around political risk analysis or policy advice more generally, and we bring in practitioners and individuals with experience in that field to share those with our students. I already said quite a bit about, I guess, the experience of studying at LSE in the EI, but also in London. I think that's certainly something that makes LSE very, very special. We're obviously not just close to policymakers who work in London, and some of them you will hear in a moment as members of our panel, but also obviously we are close to people who come through London, right? And LSE is very much renowned for its very active public lecture program, and we really take pride in, I guess, bringing speakers from lots of different spheres to LSE and exchange with them in debates, discussions, and so on. Maybe one migration specific thing that I wanted to mention here in terms of this wider kind of research environment in which we operate here at LSE. We operate something called the London Migration Research Group Seminar Series in cooperation with some other London-based universities, for example, SOAS, the School for African and Oriental Studies, where we have a number of more research-focused seminars on migration every term, a number of speakers each term, and we invite both policymakers, academics, but also graduate students to engage in contemporary policy debates and wider migration research questions. I'm sure there are others who can say more about the alumni networks and opportunities, but I'll leave it with that. But happy to come back in later on in the discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you, Aiko. That was a great overview, and I'm sure gave a great little taster of what students can expect on this program. Thank you very much. So we're going to shift now to our panel format. I just wanted to remind everybody who's in the room here with us, as you may not be able to see them just yet. So to begin, we're just going to start with brief introductions from everybody to hear a little bit more about who they are and what they studied and what they've gone on to do, but then we'll dive deeper into each of these themes. So I don't know if maybe Lauren, if you'd like to kick us off, that's all right.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm delighted to be on this panel joined by fellow alumni of the IMPP program. So yeah, my name is Lauren Mansell. I am from the class of 2024. And previously, I had studied an undergraduate in history and politics in University College Dublin. And if you can't tell, I am from Ireland. Sorry, forgot to mention. Yeah, and I've loved London. LSE was a huge part of what made me love London so much and made me want to stay after my studies. And after my studies, I went on to join the team at the Embassy of Ireland as a graduate policy officer on the community and cultural teams, and have now progressed as cultural affairs assistant at the team here.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you for being here with us today. I guess in the same cohort, we can move on to Marion, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm also really happy to be here and to be part of this webinar alongside fellow alumni Lauren and the team at the European Institute. I'm originally, as you can tell as well, from France. My background is in international relations. I studied at King's College London in my bachelor, and I completed the Masters in International Migration and Public Policy in 2024, like Lauren, and I've been working in several international organizations and research centers that work with policymakers in developing countries to promote peace, reduce conflict, and ensure development and sustainable growth. And right now, I am working as program management assistant at the International Growth Center, which is actually hosted by the LSE. So I didn't go too far. I think I realized I loved the LSE so much that I didn't want to leave, and I kind of found the perfect space that allowed me to do that. So yeah, really happy to be here.
Brilliant. Thank you, Marion. And last but not least, Jonathan. Nice to see you.
Yeah, likewise, and thanks for having me on the panel as well. So yeah, my name's Jonathan Purcell. I was class of 2022. Yeah, I'm a Irish and British dual citizen. I did my undergrad at University College London and a year at University College Dublin as well, actually. And that was in history. And then since graduating, I started at Greenpeace for 6 months, and then I've been at the International Centre of Justice for Palestinians since then.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. That gives a good idea of who's in the room here with us today and the amazing experiences you've gone on to do. So I guess to begin, we'll focus a bit more on the program itself, and it'd be nice to hear a bit more about your motivations for applying to the international migration and public policy at the time, and yeah, what appealed to you and what potentially were then your main takeaways from doing that program. Maybe Marion, to switch up the order.
That sounds good. So during my undergraduate thesis, I wrote about the Syrian civil war and more particularly the large forced migration flows that flew into Europe in 2015 and 2016. And that sort of made me want to explore more how different countries first understand migration and then respond to it, and sort of through which policies. When I came across the masters in IMPP at the European Institute, I thought it was the perfect kind of masters because, as Eiko rightly mentioned, it offers both a very strong theoretical base and plenty of hands-on policy-focused courses, workshops, and opportunities. Since I have been in London since 2020, I was also very much drawn to LSE's international community and the chance to learn from students from all over the world with very different perspectives on migration. And to answer maybe the second part of the question, the kind of key takeaways and things that I learned, I would say there's probably both a learning that is a bit more theoretical, but as again, I'm going to circle back, but as Eiko mentioned, how migration is really connected to all kinds of policies. So whether it's economic, social, environmental, cultural, legal policies, it's actually the multidisciplinary aspect of migration is something I've not seen before in any other kind of form and field of study. We also talk a lot in the masters about sort of push and pull factors of migration. And I realize, I think, how multifaceted international mobility and migration is. In in that regard. And maybe more lastly, personally, um, the masters is very much fast-paced. We are quickly very, very busy, and it can seem overwhelming at first. But I think that in the long run, it kind of taught me to be resilient, which is something that still helps me today navigate my work life. And yeah, studying alongside such amazing students, making friends as well, has been just an amazing experience. So that's kind of all my takeaways.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mahiam. That's a great insight into the program. Jonathan, would you like to tell us more about why you came to study this master's program?
Yeah, sure. So I think maybe talking a little bit about what I did at my undergrad is probably the main reason why I ended up in this direction. So yeah, my undergrad was history, and a lot of it was late 20th century conflict resolution. So I focused on South Africa, the north of Ireland, and Rwanda in particular, a bit on former Yugoslavia as well. So I think the asylum and refugee elements of migration were sort of becoming more of an interest of me because of that side. And then I had less of an interest in domestic British history, except for, again, sort of mid to late 20th century migration history. So I did one of my research projects on media depictions of the Irish in 1980s Britain, and then also quite a lot on racist policing in the UK, especially in relation to Brixton in 1981, and also the squatting in post-war London scene, which was also quite heavily dominated by migrant communities. So I think it was, and I did consider doing a master's in conflict resolution, in development in related areas as well. But I think that the appeal of migration was that I had an interest in sort of second generation integration in the domestic sphere, and also the sort of refugee and asylum seeker angles from my international interests too. So I think that's what brought me to migration. And then in terms of LSE in particular, I think that coming from a larger university, which was very good, but like very broad. You know, UCL has so many different departments. LSE did naturally appeal to me, given its political niche. I felt like, especially at master's level, it made sense to go to a sort of uh, narrower remit university. And then also, I was quite taken by the fact that LSE is such a large postgrads population, because I feel like often postgrads can kind of get lost or forgotten about when the majority of the university is undergrads. And if I recall correctly, I think LSE is one of very few that has a slight majority of postgrad over undergrad. So yeah, I was it wasn't as high in my considerations to do as an undergrad, but I think it made a lot of sense at master's level.
Absolutely. Yeah, indeed, we do have a huge postgrad and PhD community here at the European Institute, and well, European Institute is postgrad only, but then LSC more widely. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Lauren, could you tell us a bit more about your motivations for coming to the LSE?
Yeah, I'm going to start off quite similar to Marion and Jonathan, because mine was also very much influenced by what I ended up doing my undergraduate thesis on. So as I said earlier, I did history and politics in University College Dublin, and as part of that, I took a real shine to migration focused modules, and especially those focused on Irish emigration. There's obviously, I feel like there isn't a single Irish person that hasn't been touched by emigration in some way or other. So I then went on to do my thesis on how the Irish government and Catholic Church both responded to Irish emigrant welfare concerns, bear with me, in Britain between the 1950s and the 1980s. So there were two huge eras of Irish immigration, especially to Britain. And there were different emigrant welfare concerns associated with different genders, different backgrounds, and of course the different years. And I thoroughly enjoyed the research so much. I was in the archives, the National Archives in Ireland. I was in the Dublin Diocesan Archives, and they were thrilled to have a young person in researching. That wasn't something they were used to. So it was a really impactful project that I went on to win the Mansion House Award in Irish history for that dissertation as well. So that was really inspiring for me to kind of keep up the studies. But also I felt like I had done quite enough on the Irish focus that I really wanted to now lean more into the international aspect, because migration and more general refugee studies and such was of interest to me. So when it came to the time to actually consider masters properly, I looked around and I wasn't happy with the options that were available in Ireland. They were either just too focused on one specific area. And of course, migration is very broad, but I really liked the aspect of LSE's IMPP program, that it brought together the international migration, but also the public policy aspect. I feel like that added quite a lot. And the public policy wasn't something I was necessarily used to studying. So I really wanted to challenge myself and just, yeah, get outside the box more. I also really liked the international appeal of LSE as well. And couldn't have anticipated when I was making the application the amount of friends I'd make and the people I'd meet from all different walks of life. And as part of that, as the IMPP program is so diverse and people come from all over the world to study it, you learn so much through the course just by people talking about their experiences. I feel like naturally I could easily become the spokesperson for Ireland in the class, and Marion, I'm sure you know would talk about France sometimes. It was really, not saying that is the definite view of the country, but it was great to have that point of view in the classroom and people sharing different aspects of everything. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Lauren. Incredible. So yeah, you can see we have a very two Irish but still very diverse interests and backgrounds as well. So I wanted to ask a bit more practically now, like once you became students at LSE, it'd be useful to hear what kind of your week to week look like here. In addition to classes, what were kind of the opportunities you took advantage of? Were there any societies or internships or clubs that you joined or you felt made a real impact on your time here? It'd be nice to hear a bit more about what it looks like to be a student here. I don't know, maybe Jonathan or Marion?
Yeah, sure. So I think the main thing for me here is probably talking about part-time work actually, because I had two different internships during my time at LSE. So one in first term, and then quite neatly I switched to another one in second term. So I worked 2 days a week in first term and 3 days a week in second term, and I was officially full time at LSE. So that did mean it had to be concentrated a bit. But what was really good compared to undergrad is there was a lot of flexibility. For instance, where there were 2 or 3 seminar classes, you could pick the specific one that you wanted to be in, which I found very helpful because I just essentially concentrated a full week's worth of seminars into 2 sort of 9 to 5 or so days. So just had 2 very intense days, did my readings in the evening, and then worked in the meantime. And yeah, the jobs themselves, the first one actually was quite related to migration. It was working for an interfaith charity that was sort of London wide. So it was working on the main projects I did. One was called Sustainable Sanctuaries, and it was work on making places of worship more environmentally sustainable. And then the like churches, mosques, synagogues, temples. And then the second one was a homelessness network, which also obviously included lots of migrants. So that was organized by a Catholic church, and then people would be distributed to various mosques, synagogues, churches, and temples to stay the night and get meals. So I did that in the first term, and then I moved to a policy role at a disability charity called Muscular Dystrophy UK, a very rare disability related to neuromuscular function. And yeah, worked there until April and was offered an extension, but I actually then turned it down to focus on my DIS in the summer. So I think it was intense, but balanceable up to a point. But I think definitely made the right decision to then just hone in on the DIS for the tail end of it. Yeah, society-wise, I also played for the LSE football team as well. But yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, it sounds like a busy year, but I'm sure it was very helpful afterwards with your experience. Mariam, would you like to tell us a bit more about what your week to week looked like?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna echo Jonathan a little bit. It was also quite busy. So a typical week, I think, involved around 10 hours of classes, if I'm not kind of mistaken. I think, yeah, around 10 hours. And classes were sort of quite staggered across the week, which meant that there was a lot of time to study around campus or from home. But I did have kind of two crossing jobs as well. So at the time, I was finishing an internship at the French Embassy in the UK, actually in cultural affairs, working on the UK's exit from the Erasmus scheme. So I was finishing that. I was thankfully doing it part-time, but I was also working in a refugee center in London called Notre Dame Refugee Center. So it was linked to French-speaking communities across London. So I was doing casework part-time as well. That was sometimes that meant that I needed to be in different places at different time, and I couldn't really necessarily just go on campus and sit and study all day. But I sort of made it work because I could separate sort of my readings depending on the modules and kind of allocate my time like that. That finished halfway through the masters, so I could dedicate then more time to focus on kind of opportunities that LSE had to offer. I started working as an event assistant at the European Institute, which was really good fun because that allowed me then to take part in loads of events across the LSE, which I really enjoyed. Apart from that, I don't think I took part in societies that much, but I definitely went to a lot of the EU in practice seminars, which were weekly, which were super interesting as well, and just so beneficial to gain insight into different fields. So I thought that was great. So that's sort of how my typical weeks looked like.
Great. Thank you, Mariam. That's really helpful. Lauren, what about you? What were the kinds of things you were doing on your week here? Let's see.
Yeah, I was trying to think back to my weekly experience, but yeah, unlike Jonathan and Marion, I didn't necessarily have a part-time job or an internship, though. Listening, I wish I had taken the opportunity. I think at the time I was like, God, I don't know how anybody is managing a full-time master's and an internship. So really, like, it's so admirable. So I was in quite a lucky position that I had worked a lot beforehand and saved a lot beforehand, that I was able to get by for the year without that additional financial support and work support. But yeah, so my week was very heavily just focused around life at LSE. So as Marion just mentioned, there was the weekly layout between classes and seminars. I thought, looking back now, it was so manageable. Everything was quite spaced out very well. Of course, at first, I think when you first started LSE, whether you have just come from your undergraduate degree or you've taken a year or a few years out or you've been working, it can be quite hard to get used to this schedule again of studying, classes, seminar, and also making time for your hobbies and spending time with friends, especially the first few weeks when you're really trying to get to know people on your course. But it just becomes natural to you, I think. So I found the week to week quite doable, especially closer towards the dissertation time frame. I got settled up nicely in the library, and there's really nice spots around campus to kind of hang out and have lunch and kind of remove yourself from the intensity of the dissertation and whatnot. But yeah, I think that was kind of the day to day. Also, myself and Marion were student academic representatives with the European Institute, so that took up a little bit of time as well, kind of reaching out to our classmates and surveying them to see how they were getting on. Are there any concerns? Anything they'd like to suggest for the IMPP program or the European Institute in general. And we did a lot of events with the European Institute as well, which were quite nice. So yeah, there's definitely loads of things to get involved in.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lauren. I guess, Aika, this could be a good point to jump in, if that's okay, to maybe explain a little bit more, since we have students coming from all over the world, to LSE, what the teaching style kind of looks like here at the European Institute and the type of academic support every student receives here and can lean on.
Yeah, happy to do that. I hadn't quite realized how busy our students were listening to this. I know that everybody was very busy, but this reminds me of that even more so. So, yeah, in terms of your question, Delphine, about a kind of teaching style, I did some of my undergraduate in Germany studying economics and I then actually switched mid kind of degree and transferred to LSE. So in a way, I had the personal experience of kind of transferring mid degree from one kind of national educational system to another. And it was very different, and maybe partly also because of the disciplinary change, but certainly this idea that teaching is quite a lot of kind of very small group based, very discussion based, I think certainly was something that was very different to my German experience, and also something that I appreciated immensely. So the idea that you and as we just heard, right, take the opportunity to exchange with your classmates and learn from them as well as from your professors. I think the feedback that we sometimes get from students is that, and it was earlier mentioned, that kind of the usual kind of in classroom teaching load is around 10 hours, which might strike some students from other national backgrounds as relatively low. And that's something that a number of students of mine have commented on. Of course, that doesn't mean that the work is 10 hours a week. There's certainly an expectation that for every hour in the classroom, you'd have to do several hours of preparation, reading, and so on in order to fully participate and make the best of the various courses that you take. I think those are probably my two main points at the moment. I don't know whether others want to add to that.
No, that's great. Thank you. That's really helpful because yeah, everyone's including in the room came from different backgrounds, so it's good to kind of clarify how students were able to take on other opportunities at the same time. But it does, as Lauren said, take a lot of discipline and time management, and everyone makes their own kind of decisions while they're here. So I guess speaking of internships and work experiences and things like that, if you get to shift now to life after LSE and what you've all gone on to do with your careers. So I'd like to hear from each of you a bit more about the roles that you're currently in. It'd be great to get a bit more of an insight into what that actually looks like and how it connects, or maybe not so much. Maybe you've gone a different path with your degree. And if you find yourself applying the degree still to this day, or you've kind of extended from it. So yes, I don't know who we spoke with last. Maybe Jonathan, you want to kick us off as our 2022 alumni?
Yeah, sure. I guess the longest amount of time since being there. So yeah, when I finished my master's, I started working at Greenpeace. Got an internship in the press and communications team there, and actually, it was 2 rounds of interview, and the first one was a phone interview, which was the day before the diss was due, which was kind of stressful because it was a lot of balancing. Thank God I hadn't extended the previous job and was doing all three of those things at the same time. But yeah, I was trying to do some interview prep whilst also finishing off the dissertation. But I think broadly was worth doing that because it did end up with me going to Greenpeace. It was an interesting time because about 2 weeks or so, 3 weeks into me being there, Liz Truss was Prime Minister at the time and had her party conference, which was disrupted by Greenpeace protesters on my very first day because I didn't have much to do. I painted the sign that they held up, so it's quite a cool little hook there. But yeah, very interesting reactive time on. I mean, I was in press and comms, not in policy, but fracking was a conversation that had not been in the public discourse for a good decade, and it was suddenly now in the throes. The first coal mine was going to be opened in 30 years, like really, really backfoot stuff. But it meant that it was a very interesting time to work there. The main I worked with the oil and gas team, and the main project at the time was Greenpeace activists had blockaded a third flagged ship. It was Russian but Greek flagged that had 33,000 tons of Russian oil that they were going to import into the UK. This broke UK sanctions laws at the time, but because of the third flag loophole, it was going to go ahead, and then Greenpeace activists stopped it. And they got charged with aggravated trespass. I was doing the press around that case, but they did win the case, so that's good. Then yeah, so I was there for about 6 months, and then I moved to the International Centre of Justice for Palestinians. Again, very serendipitous timing. I was only on a contract at Greenpeace, and I got the offer a day before my contract finished, so got really lucky in that sense as well. And yeah, very small organization at the time that I joined. It's a Palestinian rights organization, but its main focus is legal work. So working through the lens of the law to uphold Palestinian rights. And yeah, it was small when I joined in May 2023. But it was a more senior role. It was officer level instead of assistant, and actually there was only an officer. There was no head of comms and also it was broader. It wasn't just press and comms. It was also policy and public affairs, which I obviously wanted to go back to, given my master's and previous experience. So it was nice to be able to do both. And yeah, it was a relatively ironic to say now, but like I thought at the time it would be a relatively slower paced policy area to environmental things because of all of the trust policies, and also the cost of living crisis was at its peak in the winter of 2022. So I thought it was a way to sort of gain responsibility in a small organization at a slower pace, which was a nice theory. Obviously, with this beginning of the genocide in October, the nature of the October 2023, the nature of the job changed a lot. So we expanded very, very rapidly, which has helped. So I became a senior public affairs and comms officer, and we hired new officers, and now I'm head of public affairs and comms. So I had always been the only person, and then essentially hired underneath me rather than taking a job that already existed. But in a way, quite a nice way to grow into that sort of role and build a team that you sort of pick rather than, the alternative. So yeah, and then in terms of what the role actually looks like, it is very much two different jobs under one. So the public affairs and policy, I do a lot of writing briefings for parliamentarians and supporting them, writing speeches, private members' bills, submitting evidence to select committees, and this sort of research and policy-based work. And then on the other side, the press and communications is writing press releases, being a spokesperson for the organization on TV and radio, and that sort of side of things. So yeah, that's a rough overview of the role. And in terms of the way that my job applies to it, less so, I must admit, at Greenpeace. At ICJP, there's lots of different policy areas, but one of the campaigns that we've been pushing for a long time is various different Palestinian visa schemes. So one modeled on Homes for Ukraine, Homes for Palestinian scheme. Another one which has been successful in uptake on some level, which is great to see, which is a child evacuation scheme for children with who require surgery where there aren't facilities in Gaza. And that has had uptake, and also a Gaza students scheme. So actually a lot of master's and PhD students who already had an offer, who weren't able to fulfill their visa application center requirements because it had been blown up by Israel. So other countries had helped students travel to Jordan to do their VAC in Jordan and then come to the UK. And eventually that scheme has also been successful. So elements of my work still relate to migration. It's a rather unique context because the main emphasis is the right to return, which is denied, which isn't necessarily something that's as centered in other migrant experiences, but is very specific to the Palestinian case. But yeah, that's a rough overview.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jonathan. That was very insightful. Sounds like a very varied and full-on role as well. Thank you so much. Marion, maybe would you like to go next and tell us more about your work at the International Growth Center?
Yeah, absolutely. So wise, I sort of undertook a bit of a journey where my only sort of professional experience before starting the master's was at the embassy, and it was sort of quite institutional, which I sort of really enjoyed and really thought that's what I was going to do later. And it turned out quite different, frankly. I got the opportunity to take part in a research consultancy at the IOM UN through LSE during my master's, and I co-wrote reports on understanding climate mobility in the Horn of Africa, which kind of brought a sort of new interest in kind of understanding a bit better these links between migration, but also more broadly kind of development and climate change. I then started an internship. I think I was really I thought, Jonathan, when you were talking about your internship experience right at the moment of your deadline dissertation, I wonder how many students have this exact same experience, because I had the same. So I had an interview on the day the dissertation was due to take an internship at the International Crisis Group. So I was a part of their or I was in research and project management in their climate, environment, and conflict team. So they were looking at mobility in East Africa still, and looking at the intersection between international or like migration from the Horn of Africa internationally, climate and potential risks of conflicts, and sort of trying to influence policy circles at the EU, but also at the UN and at COP. So at the time it was COP 29 that took place in Baku. So that's sort of where I realized I really wanted to contribute to migration in kind of quite an international and broad sense, and work in international research centers. I realized I really like the sort of intersection between policymaking and research, and how sometimes research can help drive policies that would be better for communities and livelihood through research and advocacy work. And now at the International Growth Center, went on to become a program management assistant. And the International Growth Center works with governments in Africa, South Asia, and the Middle East to promote sustainable and inclusive growth, same through research primarily. So my current role involves it's more programmatic role, so it's sort of a bit more high level than on a project level. I collaborate quite closely with teams across these regions and help influence key strategic, programmatic, operational priorities. Ultimately, I would say the goal is very much connected to my master's. My day-to-day role is not so much, but I think it's more that the mix of policy analysis and theory prepared me to do that role, hopefully well, and just always remain sensitive to the challenges that these developing countries face that include climate change, political instability, large outward migration flows. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Marion. And Lauren, could you tell us a bit more about your work at the embassy here in Embassy of Ireland here in London?
Yeah, so kind of similar enough. I remember doing my interview here for the graduate policy role when it was in the middle of a heat wave, and the role started, I think it was a day or so before the dissertation was due, so it was all go 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 as well. So I think a lot of students similarly have that time period between getting the dissertation finished, but also naturally wanting to have something lined up for when you're officially completed your studies. So yeah, I started in 2024 then as the graduate policy officer for the community and culture team. So each year the Embassy of Ireland in London takes on 5 graduate policy officers, and you could be working in any unit. So community and culture are put together because they do naturally come hand in hand, which obviously I've learned throughout my time here. There's domestic UK politics, there's foreign policy, there's Brexit and EU, still dealing quite a lot with the ramifications of Brexit. There's a press and comms side as well, so there's quite a lot of different aspects you could go into. My interview just ended up being completely community focused, and it's so interesting talking to other people who did the interview where they were trying to touch on every aspect to see where is your best fit. But I think seeing that my master's was the international migration and public policy from LSE, what my undergraduate thesis was also on, the topic for my interview was just completely migration and community focused. So I kind of was praying that they'd put me in the community section. I really, really enjoyed my time as a graduate policy officer. So the contract was for 11 months. We did a lot of work. It was very eye-opening and quite funny. A lot of the work that I had uncovered in my undergraduate thesis, I never realized I'd be working on the committee that I wrote about that was founded in 1980s to help financially support organisations around the United Kingdom that help Irish immigrants that are struggling, and also just to help them integrate more and kind of maintain their links to their culture and their home. So that was quite nice. We do a lot of work on what's called the Immigrant Support Programme here. So that's a fund that the Irish government divvies out every year all around the world, which is always overseen by the embassy or the consulates in the local areas. And so that includes assessing applications, getting out and visiting organisations. So I visited many homelessness organisations, religious organisations, various elderly organisations. So a lot of the Irish immigration population here now are very elderly, so there's a lot of healthcare complications that have arisen. It was very eye-opening. There was a lot of discussions about end-of-life care for Irish people in Britain. So the way that we handle death, funerals, wakes is quite different to the way it's handled here. And that was quite eye-opening to kind of remember those different aspects of different migrant communities in Britain as well. And kind of like Marion said, our masters equips you to be very sensitive and be very acknowledgeable of these issues. We did a lot of work with MPs in Parliament on the Survivors Bill. So Liam Conlon MP from the Labour Party in particular has been a true figurehead for pushing forward bills that protect the rights of survivors of institutional abuse that may have moved here from Ireland, and just ensuring that they get all the rights that they're entitled to. And yeah, really enjoyed my work on the community section. Sadly, when that contract ended, I started looking at new jobs. Thankfully, a job arose on the cultural team full time, which is cultural affairs assistant. The official title is administrative assistant, but everyone agrees that's just not the role. Not every day is spent sat down answering emails and going through budgets and all the rest. But just last night, I was working quite late on an event to launch the Dublin International Film Festival here, and it was very interesting. We do a lot of cultural diplomacy, and I think that event in itself speaks to that quite nicely. We had a lot of people from the Irish film and TV industry and a lot of people from the British film and TV industry. There were people from Germany, France. Everybody was upstairs in the ballroom, networking, creating new opportunities and new opportunities for collaboration on cultural projects. It was very interesting. I've worked, one of the key highlights as my time as cultural affairs assistant here is working on cultural policies which bring together different national cultural institutions. So we've held many events where we've brought over the heads of national cultural institutions from the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland and all around the rest of the United Kingdom as well. So those be heads of national galleries, national archives, even theatre and those kind of organisations. And a lot of exciting cooperative projects have come from that. Tate Britain are currently doing an exhibition in collaboration with the National Gallery of Ireland on William Blake, and there's a lot of archival projects that are happening, digitalisation projects that are happening as well. So it's great to be able to link these groups across the nations together to learn and work on new projects together.
Amazing. Wow, incredible. That sounds like a very fascinating role. Thank you so much, Lauren. So we're reaching the end of the time we have here today. But before I close off, wondering if we can do a very quick, maybe rapid fire round to just hear one last time from everyone. If you have any last piece of advice for people looking to apply to this program or something you'd wish you'd known at the time that has helped you since after experiencing the whole journey from applicant to current student to graduate. Very, very briefly, Aiko as well, if you'd like to jump in.
Yeah, just reflecting on what I've heard, listening to the experiences of our three alumni. What I found fascinating was kind of the various kind of ways that you have used your experiences from the IMPP program and made it relevant in the various roles that you have taken on. That's fascinating. Obviously, from my perspective as program director, I'm very happy that we now close to, I think, 500 alumni in the overall in the IMPP program. So I very much encourage current students to reach out and make those links and use alumni, former students as a resource. And I'm really grateful for you to share your experiences. It was great to hear those.
Thank you, Aiko. Jonathan, maybe if you want to kick off our very quickly because we're running short on time.
No problem. I'll be quick. Yeah, others touched on it. I haven't yet, but would reiterate like what you learn from your other classmates is actually quite a significant proportion of it. People have such interesting perspectives, and on actually specific cases of some Palestinians. I've worked with former classmates who work actually in the latter integration elements of migration, more like grassroots case study, caseworker stuff. So these relationships will always be useful going forward, but actually you learn so much from them in the seminars themselves as much as you do from the slides.
Amazing. Thank you, Jonathan. Lauren or Marion, whoever would like to go first.
I'd say just don't be afraid. It can seem daunting applying for LSE and trying to imagine yourself in LSE and in London and in this busy environment and doing what is a challenging, but I can't emphasize this enough, such a rewarding master's. Don't be afraid. And when you are in the master's program as well, again, just keep that in mind. Don't be afraid. You are well able to get up and make presentations. You're well able to make your own points and do your own research, and make the most of the opportunities that are given to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lauren.
I'll try to do it in like 2-3 sentences max. A common probably application tip is usually to link kind of your past experience to what you're going to do after the masters. But I would say do that definitely, but also whilst you are at LSE, be a yes person and take any opportunity you can, because it might take you to places you are not even realizing right now, and that's sort of the beauty, I think, of doing a masters at LSE. So yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for all your insights and advice. It's been really insightful session here today. I hope you can now see my screen again. Just to conclude with some last housekeeping things. So if you have any questions or concerns based on what we mentioned today and would like to learn more, we of course have lots of information on our website about the program and lots of videos and alumni content, but you can also reach out to our team at ei@lse.ac.uk for specifics. And as I mentioned, we did a full information session on studying at the European Institute, where you can learn more about things like EU in practice seminars and professional skills workshops and our alumni mentorship program and things like that. So I highly encourage you to rewatch that session on our information page on our study hub. And LSE is holding a mini virtual graduate open event, so kind of second edition of these November events in February from the 16th to 20th. So you can register for those on that page as well, or search them up on LSE's website. So yeah, there's lots more resources and information sessions available if you're keen to find out more. And finally, we also have very active social media and work with our student content creators who are master students here and are showcasing their time at LSE and giving additional tips and advice. So if you'd like to see for yourself what kind of things we get up to here in the department and what it looks like to be a student here, you can also have a look on our social media. But I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in live, and of course our amazing alumni and program director Aiko, but also Adam, who's been helping us in the chat with any questions. Thank you everyone for joining us today. It was very interesting to hear from all your experiences. So that's it for today. Thank you so much.